Hello, and welcome to a tape. Just an ordinary tape, not an exploding tape, not a tape that will release a poisonous gas causing you to believe that you are a chicken and making you run outside buck naked, yelling "Bawk, bawk, 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 bawk," up and down in the street all day. No, just a regular tape that you can listen to. It's not a tape that will somehow cause mutant turds to fall from the ceiling, covering you in a mound of stinky mush of alien droppings. No, nothing like that. It's just a regular tape that you can listen to. Listening to this tape, you certainly don't have to worry about time imploding upon itself into a singularity vortex, sucking you in to a small yet cavernous space where you will be forced for an eternity to watch reruns of the popular yet bad Nickelodeon television show, The Amanda Show. No, this is just a tape of stories. So you can sit back and relax. Ignore that. That was not an alien turd falling on the ground. And no, Amanda, just let me. It's not ready yet. And you'll just listen to these stories, and you don't have to worry about any of those other unfortunate events occurring, because this is, after all, just an ordinary tape of stories. Once upon a time, Luke Skywalker was playing catch with his dad, Darth Vader. You see, at the end of that Star Wars movie, where Darth Vader appeared to have died and they burned his body and so forth, they were actually just burning the costume, the Vader costume. In reality, Luke, when they were on that Death Star and it was all blowing up around him, he realized, wait a minute, I don't have to drag Dad out of here. I can just use the Force to carry him out. So he levitated him with the Force, took him out. They burned the body as a sign of getting rid of the dark side of the Force and effects and so forth. And now he basically had an ordinary home life, playing catch with his dad.
Luke, use the Force to catch the ball.
And Darth would throw the ball. I got it, Dad. Don't whoop! And it hit Luke in the head and threw him back into this wall of the barn. Did I catch it?
No, you did not, Luke. Try again. Throw me the ball.
Okay, Dad. And Luke threw the ball. It didn't actually go toward Darth, but Luke's friend, Jar Jar Binks, happened to catch the ball because he was just coming up with his pal Chewbacca to see what was going on. Said Chewbacca, and Jar Jar said, apple? And he started to eat it, and Chewbacca pulled it out of his hand. Meaning, no, that's not an apple, that's a ball. We have to give it back to Darth. And so Chewbacca threw the ball back to Darth, and Darth said,
Luke, concentrate on the Force. Try again.
And he threw the ball, and the ball can hit Luke in the forehead and knocked him through the wall of the barn and onto the ground. Anybody get the number of that space truck? Asked Luke.
I grow weary of this,
Said Darth.
Continue to practice this game of catch with your friends. I shall go inside to take a nap.
And so Darth went inside, and Luke said, hey guys, what's up? And Jar Jar explained, Jar Jar have apple. And he held out a hologram. Why, Jar Jar, that's some kind of message, of holographic message, said Luke. Yeah, said Jar Jar. Jar Jar have apple message for Luke. And so they decided to play it. They turned it on, and there was Obi-Wan Kenobi. Hello, Luke. This is Obi-Wan Kenobi. You may know me as Ben. If you are seeing this message, it means that Jar Jar has successfully delivered it to you and not eaten it. Thus, we are well on our way to saving the galaxy. You see, their brand new series of Sith Lords has regrouped to attack the galaxy. They are getting together on Dagobah. We need your help, Luke. Luke, you are our only chance. Go to Dagobah and defeat them. You must save the universe, or at least this part of the universe known as the galaxy. Wow, said Luke. We better get going right now. Come on, guys. Said Chewbacca. You're right. I better tell my dad I'm going. I'm going to have to borrow the spaceship. And so they went inside. Dad? Now, Luke knows that Darth hates to be woken up, but he had no choice. I mean, the galaxy was at stake. Dad, excuse me?
What is going on?
Said Darth.
I've been awoken from my dreams. No!
Mirrors started breaking and metal pieces of the set started exploding. Then he said,
Oh, sorry. What's going on, Luke?
well, I got a message from Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Obi-Wan Kenobi?
But he's dead. Yeah, but he recorded this message before he's dead. And he...
For the sake of this story, Luke, I'll pretend that makes sense. What did Obi-Wan have to say?
Well, you see, there's the universe, the galaxy, actually. It's under attack again by Sith Lords, led by the mysterious and evil Eraserhead.
Lord Eraserhead, I knew him well. That was a long, long time ago.
In a galaxy far, far away?
No, in this galaxy. What are you talking about?
Never mind. Anyway, my friends and I are gonna go off and save the galaxy.
No, Luke, it's far too dangerous. Let me go. I know how to handle Sith Lords.
Yeah, but the message was for me, Dad, so I really want to go.
Oh, I see. I'll tell you what. I'll go with you. We shall, in fact, go together. Together is the way we shall go, and in going together, we shall go not apart, but together.
So they went. They got in the spaceship, they packed the fridge full of apples for Jar Jar, and Jar Jar, Luke, Darth, and Chewbacca, and of course Jar Jar, who is mentioned first in this series of names, got into the spaceship and flew off. They were doing fine. They were getting kind of near Dagobah, which is, of course, Yoda's home planet, when suddenly Jar Jar decided that he was hungry. Jar Jar wants some apples, thought Jar Jar. And then Jar Jar said Jar Jar thought that Jar Jar wanted some apples, so Jar Jar saying Jar Jar wants some apples. Chewbacca was, of course, flying the spaceship, and Jar Jar opened the door, and the apples fell out in a giant cascade of round mounds of apples bouncing everywhere. Jar Jar slipped and fell across the arms of Chewbacca. The spaceship careened out of control. "Wah!" said the narrator as they silently spun around and smash crash landed. "Where are we?" said a random voice. They looked out the window, and Luke said, "We're on Bungbar."
That's ridiculous, Luke. How could you possibly know where we've landed?
Because of the sign?
What are you talking about?
The sign in the ground that says, "Welcome to Bungbar."
Ah, I see. Well, Bungbar is the moon, explained Darth, of Dagobah, so we have landed quite close. We're going to this ship is clearly not flyable. We'll have to explore the surface of Bungbar. But I must warn you.
Yeah?
First of all, there's only about a foot of breathable atmosphere on Bungbar, so everybody must crawl close to the ground.
Okay.
And watch out for Bungbarian beetles.
All right. Why?
I really don't want to discuss it,
said Darth. And so they got out. As they started crawling around on the ground, looking to see if they could find any other way of getting down to the planet of Dagobah, which they could see in the distance, they pulled themselves along the rocky yet sandy surface of the planet when suddenly a Bungbarian beetle crawled up near Chewbacca, and Chewbacca flicked it back with his arm. And Darth said, "Be careful. The Bungbarian beetles will go straight for your butt." But it was too late. A Bungbarian beetle had gotten into Luke's butt. "Bungbar," said Luke. The effect of the Bungbarian beetle, of course, is to cause the infected person to sing this song. "Bungbar, bungbar, 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 bungbar." And Luke was singing bungbar, 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 bungbar. Finally, Chewbacca couldn't take it. And he hit him in the head and knocked him out. Jar Jar said, "Luke's got a problem, and it doesn't involve apples." "Yes, we must get him to a doctor quickly." And Jar Jar said, "Let's go over there." "No, not now, Jar Jar. This is too important." "Over there," said Jar Jar. "No, Jar Jar, pay attention." "There," said Jar Jar. "Jar Jar, please. Luke has a Bungbarian beetle in his butt. We've got to get him to some sort of hospital-type place. That's why I'm pointing over there." "Look, I don't have time for that." And Darth turned around because, yes, the hospital up ahead. "Good thinking, Jar Jar." And they crawled across the ground with what it was very slow because they kept one hand on their butts to protect themselves from further encroachment by Bungbarian beetles. And they finally got to the little clinic, which had itself was only about 12 or 14 inches high. And they crawled in it, and there they met Dr. Eyeball. He actually had a large eyeball for a head, which allowed him to see quite well, at least in one direction. And Dr. Eyeball immediately diagnosed Luke as having been infected with a Bungbarian beetle, and he said there is a cure, but it's down on the planet of Dagobah. However, my hospital is actually a hospital ship, and the doctor offered to take them down to the planet. And so our team of adventurers and the doctor flew down in the spaceship, which is also a hospital,
but strangely enough, a hospital without the cure for Bungbarian beetles on board, even though it's from Bungbar, onto the surface of Dagobah, the swamp-like planet where Yoda, until he died, made his home. And that is when they started looking around to see if they could find some sort of clinic. Luckily for them, Yoda appeared. Yoda is here to help, said Yoda.
But Yoda, you are dead.
Yoda is dead, but this is a hologram of Yoda, saying Yoda is dead, but Yoda is talking to you because this is a hologram of Yoda, said Yoda.
Ah, very wise, Yoda.
We need to find a hospital. And Yoda pointed the way to the hospital. And they started crawling. And then they realized, of course, they didn't need to crawl because they were on Dagobah, which has plenty of atmosphere. So they all stood up and they started walking, and that's when they saw a large building, which wasn't a hospital at all. It was some sort of warehouse, and parked outside of it were several motley spaceships, which Darth immediately recognized as belonging to Sith Lords. The Sith Lords. They must be holed out, as they say, inside that building. And Jar Jar said, well, but over there, Jar Jar, I don't have time for that now. We've got to find the hospital for Luke. And Jar Jar said, but if we just go that way, Jar Jar, your voice is sounding more and more like Luke's. Sorry, said Jar Jar, but the Apple Hospital, Jar Jar. And of course, Darth turned around, and there was the hospital that Jar Jar was pointing to. Jar Jar, I don't have time for now, because directly in front of your finger is the hospital. I'll tell you what, I am going to look into the window of this building. I want you, Jar Jar. No, that might be foolish. Chewbacca, you take Luke to the hospital.
Jar Jar, stay with me.
And Chewbacca picked up Luke and walked over to the hospital, and Dr. Eyeball walked with him, poking himself in the eye by accident with a stick, and he held his hand over his eye, and he started singing this song. Well, I ain't got nobody. And Chewbacca looked at him and said, "Ugh!" and knocked him out. And now Chewbacca was carrying both of them, and he walked to the hospital. Meanwhile, Darth and Jar Jar looked inside of the window of the building, and there they saw them, the 4 Sith Lords. Lord Eraserhead, Lord Q-Tip, who had a large Q-tip for a head, Lord Bored, who was just sitting around looking bored, and Darth was saying,
I don't recognize that other one. I can't think of his name. Wait a minute. That's Lord No Name.
And in fact, it was. Lord No Name, Lord Bored, Lord Q-Tip, and Lord Eraserhead were plotting their imminent attack on the Jedi Council, and thus on the galaxy.
I have an idea, said Darth.
Somewhere on this planet, I have a costume.
An old Darth Vader costume,
which was in the Cave of Annoying Incidents, that near Yoda's house.
Jar Jar,
said Darth.
I'm going to go to Yoda's house, and I'm going to go into the annoying cave and look for my old Vader outfit.
I want you to stay here for when the others get back. And Jar Jar nodded his head and walked into the wall and fell unconscious. That's convenient, thought Darth, and he walked off into the woods to get his outfit. Meanwhile, all of our other adventurers came back out of the hospital, and Jar Jar explained about what was going on, and the fact that Lord Eraserhead, Lord Q-Tip, Lord Bored, and No Name were inside the building plotting. And Jar Jar noticed that Luke was holding a small jar with a Bungbarian beetle inside of it. And Jar Jar said, "Apple for Jar Jar?" "No, Jar Jar, this is a Bungbarian beetle. I can't let you have this. It's far too dangerous. It's kept safe, or kept cafe, as the case may be, inside of this small glass container, and I'm going to keep it away in my pocket in order to keep it safe." And what's that? And they looked, and in the woods, suddenly coming for them was the most horrifically evil sight they had seen in quite some time, at least since a previous episode, and it was in fact Darth Vader in full regalia with his mask and his cape, and breathing that annoying breath that he likes to breathe. "Dad, is that you?"
Yes, son. I am going to go in there and trick those Sith Lords. I want you guys to stay way behind. I'm going to get them to come out after me.
"Okay, Dad." And so Darth jumped up and went through the window and landed inside the room. And the Siths turned around. It's Lord Vader," one of them said, and that one was Q-Tip. "Wow, what are you doing here? We thought you were dead."
Yeah. Are you a hologram? No, said Darth. I am your master, Lord Vader, and I have come back. I have heard that you are plotting to take over the galaxy, and I applaud you for that. But I am your true leader, and I should lead you on that mission.
"Yeah,"
said Lord Board. Uh, but it's kind of a boring mission.
It doesn't matter. I'm going to lead you, and I want you to follow me.
Excellent, said Lord Eraserhead. We knew that we could trust in you coming back from the dead and leading us out of nowhere. What should we do?
Follow me.
And so they followed him outside the building, and meanwhile, Luke and Jar Jar and Luke's beetle and Chewbacca stayed in the woods behind watching. And Darth Vader led them up to the edge of a cliff, and he said,
No, there is an invisible walkway over this cliff. I would like all of you to keep going. I'll be there in a second. I must tie my boots.
and so he bent over, pretending to tie his boots, and the others, Lord No Name, Lord Board, Lord Q-Tip, and Lord Eraserhead, all walked over the edge of the cliff, where, of course, they fell 365 feet. Ow! Ooh! That hurts. Down to the bottom. And it was kind of like a big pit. And, in fact, there was a button because this was a pit used to trap invaders from centuries ago. And Darth pressed the button, which was hidden on the inside of a rock, which had to be opened up using a small piece of grass, which was stuck into a hole in the rock. But that detail isn't really important. What's important is that they shut the force field lid over the hole. And all of Darth's friends came out and said, "Wow, we did it!" And that was, of course, Luke's talking right there. And he said, we did it. We trapped them all. I mean, we trapped them all. Now we can go tell the ghost of Ben,
No, I'm afraid our job is not yet done.
said Darth. And he explained to them,
You see, yes, we have trapped them, but they are far too dangerous, and they would soon escape. We've got to go down there and battle them. Perhaps chop some of their body parts off and replace them with robot parts. We have to capture them in order to keep the galaxy safe from the Sith.
And so they got their lightsabers out. Chewie, of course, didn't have a lightsaber, but he picked up a rock. And Darth pressed the button to release the force field lid, and they jumped down into the pit with the Siths. Immediately, the battle started. Luke swung his lightsaber around and hit the side of a rock, which then caused a small avalanche, which buried him. He worked really hard on trying to escape, while Darth chopped both arms and legs off of Lord Q-Tip. Ow!
Don't worry, I shall soon replace them with robot parts.
Explained Darth. And he put all of the parts of Lord Q-Tip to the side, and Chewbacca took his rock and hit Lord Board on the head. Well, that's boring, said Board, and he fell down unconscious. Meanwhile, Lord No Name started running around in circles, and Jar Jar said, "Jar Jar got an apple?" And he held out an apple, and Lord No Name grabbed the apple, and just when he stopped to eat it, Luke managed to get out of the rubble. He swung his lightsaber around. Unfortunately, it just happened to hit Chewbacca in the pants and caused his pants to fall down, and Chewbacca got quite upset and hit Luke over the head. But when he was doing that, Luke fell and knocked a rock off that was just barely balanced on the edge of the cliff, and it fell down, tumbled onto Lord No Name's head, and he fell unconscious. So they managed to capture most of the lords, but Lord Eraserhead was giving him quite a bit of trouble. Chewbacca pulled up his pants, meanwhile, because see, Wookiees don't actually normally wear pants, but Chewbacca was wearing this pair of pants, and he was quite proud of it, and he thought that he should finish the battle with his pants on. Meanwhile, they didn't seem to be able to beat this Eraserhead. He was having quite a bit, he was incredible with a lightsaber. He was even giving Darth Vader a hard time, and that's when nobody happened to notice that when Luke had been smashed by the rubble of rocks. His Bombarian beetle and the glass in his shirt pocket. The glass had broken, and the Bombarian beetle was meanwhile wandering around this whole time until it found Luke's butt again. Bung bar, bung bar, bung bar, bung bar, bung bar, bung bar, bung bang, bung bar, bang 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 bar, bang 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 bar, bang 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 bang. And finally, Lord Eraserhead couldn't take it anymore. I give up, please, anything, just stop singing bung bar, bung bar, bung bar, bung bang bang. Here's my lightsaber, please, I'll chop my own arms off. And he started chopping his own arms off. And finally, Chewbacca couldn't take it anymore. Knocked Luke out. Bung bar. And they captured all of the Sith Lords, called up the Jedi Council, and had all of their parts taken away and reassembled with robot parts and put into jail. Well, that is how they managed to save the galaxy. And back home, because they, of course, got Dr. Eyeball to help them fix their planet on Bungbar, they got another bit of the medicine to get the Bungarian beetles out of Luke's butt, and they put it back in a new container. And Darth was
Tired. I think I'll take another nap.
explained Darth. And so Luke and his friends decided to play some catch as sort of an epilogue to the story. And they didn't have any ball because when the ball had been last played with after it had knocked Luke through the side of the barn building, Luke had tried to throw the ball back and he had thrown it into the pit of death by accident. And so they decided to play catch with the Bungarian beetle in his glass container. They figured that was pretty safe, and Luke threw it to Chewbacca, and Chewbacca saw it, and he hit it back toward Luke, and Luke said, "I don't see it," and he turned around, and just then, of course, it hit him in the butt. The Bungarian beetle got out, and before they knew it, Luke was singing once again, "Bung bar, bung bar, bung bar, bung bar, bung bar, bung bar, bung 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 bung." So Chewbacca and hit him in the head and knocked him out. The end. Okay. Now it's time to decide whether or not to tell another story. So I think I'll flip a coin. Let me. Okay. Heads, I tell another story. Tails, I don't. Ready? Oop. Sorry, that landed on the edge. Try it again. Ready? Oop. Nope. That one landed in another dimension. Let me try it one more time. No, try again. There goes. It's. Whoa. It's not heads or tails. It looks like intestines. That can mean only one thing. I have to sing a song. There once was a boy who smelled bad. He smelled so bad it made people sad. It wasn't from not taking a bath. The answer may make you cry or just laugh. Yes, the answer may make you dance like a giraffe. The boy was lactose intolerant, which means he can't digest dairy. But he loved to eat ice cream and cheese and whipped cream, which created huge farts that were scary. Yes, so smelly they knocked over a horse named Larry. But this story has a happy end, because Larry was really his friend. Larry went out and bought soy-based snacked products that tasted like dairy but did not create gas in his buttocks. Yes, Larry was a smart horse, not a dumb ox. So now this boy is all right. No longer must he hold his butt cheeks tight. But he knows if he needs a powerful smell, he can always eat ice cream and let his butt yell. Yes, his butt can ring loud like a giant fart bell. Okay, this is a story about a magic penguin named lived in Antarctica. He was an emperor penguin. He lived with a whole group of penguins, which he was mostly related to. They lived about 70 miles in from the ocean, which was very cold, especially during the winter months. And knew that he was magic, although he didn't exactly know what the magic power that he possessed was. He knew he must be magic because everybody has always been very nice to him and said he was special. He knew that he was actually a really bad swimmer. In fact, it's really important for penguins to be good swimmers because otherwise they can't catch food to eat when it comes time to walk all the way back to the ocean and get the food, and they could die. But Urk's family took care of him. His friends and family would catch food for him and give it to Urk because they knew that he wasn't such a good swimmer. So it wasn't clear to Urk exactly what his magic power was, but he knew that someday he would find out. They lived when they weren't fishing over in the ocean, about 70 miles in at the base of this huge cliff. It was like a mountain, this giant glacier of ice that was flat on top and actually had a cave. And in fact, the penguins used to look up there because that's actually a much better place to live. It had a cave to protect them from some of the cold winds, and it was totally protected from polar bears or the abominable snowman, who, although he did not exist, still scared the children when they heard stories about him. So in any case, that's where they wanted to live. But the penguins had to live at the base of this cliff. For one reason, they couldn't get up the top of it, but also that was where the golden egg was. You see, for generations, This penguin society had this magical golden egg. They're not quite sure what the magic was, but it was very important. It had been protected by penguins for thousands of years, as far as they knew. They didn't actually know where it came from, but it was something very special. And so when they would have that egg in the center of their group, when they would stand around and brave the cold winds during the winter and be scared of polar bears and imaginary abominable snowmen. Will now reveal to you the secret power of but I'm going to say it in French because doesn't speak French, and I don't think it's right for him to know his power before it's time to use it. What? What do you mean? Says Urk. I'm the narrator, and I'm telling the story. So continue on. You're on your way to the ocean while I tell the listener that special power is
Il peut voler.
And having said that, in French, I will now continue with the story. You see, Urk and his family were out fishing, watching out for sharks and dangerous aliens that were dressed like sharks that might try to eat penguins. And they were helping him. I mean, not the aliens, but the other penguin friends of Urk. They were giving him some food. And it came time to march the 70 miles back to their home. And they were walking and sometimes sliding and rolling and was thinking about what his power might be when they got to a great crack in the ground that hadn't been there before. But because of global warming, the entire ice sheet was starting to melt and these openings were taking place. It was a huge crack in the ground. It went down at least 700 feet, perhaps 701, and it was too far apart from one wall to the one side to the other to jump. The penguins looked down one direction. It was miles. This crack went as far as they could see. They were stuck. And suddenly, knew what he had to do. He looked at his flightless wing, and he always felt, it had been a little bit longer than the wings of the other birds. And when he was actually a younger bird, they had teased him about it a bit. But he felt like it must serve a purpose. And he looked at that edge, and he decided something right then and there. And his friends could tell what he was thinking. They were saying, "No, don't do it." They were actually speaking in penguin language, but please don't do it. You'll fall. You'll never make it. But he didn't care. He knew what he had to do. He decided to listen to the inner voice within. And he backed up and started running on his little penguin feet toward that crack, and he jumped and he fell, but then he started going up on an air draft, and he flapped his wings, and he was up in the air, and the other penguins looked up, and they couldn't believe it. There Urk was flying above in circles, and they cheered him, and he flew off. He actually flew all the way to their home, to where the penguins were trying to get to, because he decided that he had to bring them the golden egg, because maybe they could hang out where they were, but they needed the egg in the central. They had to protect the egg, and they also it was part of their culture. So he landed. He was a little bumpy landing because he wasn't used to flying, and he landed right there, and he very gently lifted up the golden egg onto his feet, just like you would a penguin egg or a baby penguin chick, and put it under the fold in his fur. He lifted it up, and he started flying, and he carried that egg, and he flew all the way back to the penguins, and the penguins saw them there, and they saw that he had the golden eggs, and once again they cheered. In penguin language for Urk, their hero, because he had brought back the egg. And just then, Urk heard another voice. It was another voice from within that told him, what? To drop the egg? No way, the egg will break. Urk didn't know what to do. I can't, that's crazy. I've got to land and give my people their egg. And yet, he said, I listened to this voice that told me I could fly. I've got to do it. And he saw below him, all of the penguins were like in a big circle looking up at him, and there was an empty space in the center. They probably expected him to land there with the egg, but instead he let it go, and it dropped. It fell, almost half a mile, because Urk was pretty high in the air, and the egg fell, and when it hit the ground, which was of course made out of ice, it broke open, and a beautiful golden light came out, and it bathed all of the penguins in this light. And landed on the ground, and the penguins felt different, and they started flapping their wings, and they realized they could all fly. They started with some of the younger penguins. They decided to try to make the jump over the crack, and they backed up, about 14 of them. Some of the older penguins were a little nervous because they, except for they hadn't ever seen a penguin fly before, and they didn't want to see their children get hurt, but they knew that had done it, so they knew it was possible, and they watched as a group of penguins ran toward that crack, jumped off the edge, and fell down. But then started flying upward. Yes, they made it, and soon all the penguins were flying. They were, of course, not very good at it, so they were bumping each other in the air and falling down to the ground, but getting back up, brushing themselves off, and flying again. And the entire flock of penguins flew over that crack back to the 70-mile place where they usually hung out, where the egg used to be. But then they kept going, and they flew up and up and up onto that cliff, onto that plateau on the top of that cliff where they had always wanted to live, where there was a cave to protect them, and where they could see any polar bears coming for miles. And besides, so far as we know, polar bears nor can't fly, nor can abominable snowmen. And they lived there happily ever after, thanks to Urk and his incredible magic powers, which it turned out was available to all of them. The end. Once upon a time, there was a strawberry. A really big, dangerous strawberry, and it was coming right for you. You had to run. You had to get away from the strawberry. Where can I go, you thought? And you actually said that out loud, but people didn't care because they were also running away from the strawberry. So you ran down the street as fast as you could. You ducked into an alley. You decided, I've got to invent some sort of time machine so that I can go back into the past and figure out why there's a strawberry that poses such a danger to society. I mean, this was a really big strawberry, and not a friendly-looking strawberry either. And so you quickly invented a time machine, which you slipped into your pocket, and you set it for about 5 minutes in the past. You figured that'd be long enough to find out what created this strawberry, or at least how to stop it. And just when the strawberry was turning the corner, and you were about to flip the time machine on and off button to on so you could go back in the past, you slipped on some strawberry seeds that had fallen off the strawberry, and the controls on the time machine got moved. Sadly, it was no longer 5 minutes in the past, but 500 million years in the past. And just as you were disappearing, you saw yourself, you thought, on the back of a giant human coming toward the strawberry, but it was too late. You didn't know what that was because you were going into the distant past, into the time before many of the dinosaurs we know so well roamed the earth. And when you landed, you looked around and you saw a kid, a child coming toward you, about 10 years old. Looked actually two brothers and sisters. The only problem was they were huge. They were gigantic, in fact. Gigantus, it was just a slang way of saying gigantic. And they were so huge that you decided to name them Homo giganticus, which is a species of human beings that was at least 50 feet tall, that lived 500 million years ago, that no scientist on Earth knows about, but I'm making up right at this moment in this story. And they were coming right toward you, and they were making sounds like, ooh, and they reached down. There was nowhere you could run quickly enough to get away from them, and with two little fingers, which were actually gigantic fingers to you, they picked you up by the back of your shirt and carried you home in one of their pockets. The little boy put you in the pocket. And they brought you home. They thought you were so cute. I mean, there you were, a miniature human. They had never seen anything like this, a fully developed human, and yet you were only the size of less than the size of a pinky of an adult Homo giganticus. And you lived among them. They fed you. Mostly they fed you pieces of strawberry, but they fed you other things, and they were actually quite friendly. They had a primitive television that they used to watch, which actually was empty, and they would just crouch down inside of it and put on little shows for each other. And after a couple of weeks, you started to learn the rudiments, just the basics of their language, so that you could communicate with them, because you thought maybe they could come back and help with this giant strawberry problem. And you managed to say the word strawberry, which caused them to feed you a lot more strawberry, until about a week later, when you were finally able to explain to them the situation, the fact that you came from the future when people were much smaller, but when apparently there's at least one giant strawberry, and one of the Homo giganticuses, named Bob, said that he would come along with you and help you. And so you climbed onto his shoulders, reached down into your pocket, reversed the setting on the time machine, and went back to the future 500 million years, minus 5 minutes or so that you wouldn't actually be too late. And you appeared just as actually, oh, you were a little bit off. It was just when you were disappearing toward the past. And there was the strawberry coming down the alley, and Bob picked it up and bit into it and said it was quite delicious. And sadly, you had to say goodbye to Bob. You explained to him, you told him to tell the Giganticus people of the past that you were sorry that you wouldn't be able to come back. But really, your place was here, in the here and now, even with the occasional gigantic strawberry. And Bob said, well, my place is with my people, so I will have to go as well. And Bob shook your tiny hand, and you started to set the time machine to send Bob back in time when you looked down the street and realized that there were other humongous fruits and vegetables which were creating havoc in the city. Clearly, you needed Bob's help some more. So you decided to keep the time portal open, and you went back in time with Bob and brought a few of his friends back. Now, some of the other people around were a little scared to see the gigantic humans walking around, but they appreciated the fact that they were scooping up all of the fruits and vegetables. And that's finally when you saw that where they were coming from, they were all coming from one location, the backyard of Tommy Bigelow, who was a kid who had actually, he was lactose intolerant and had really bad farts. But Tommy Bigelow and his crazy horse named Larry were creating, had created some sort of time machine vortex themselves, because they had a little time machine that they had invented that looked a lot like your time machine. And he was laughing and laughing as fruits and vegetables from the past, when fruits and vegetables were really giant for some unknown reason, perhaps to feed the Giganticus species, were coming through this porthole. Somebody on the other side was probably throwing them. And so you decided first to go back in time to when the fruits and vegetables were coming from to see what's going on. And so you set your time machine. Well, first you walked up to Tommy. I neglected to say, and said, hello, Tommy. So when are these fruits and vegetables coming from? And Tommy explained that they're coming from 500 million years ago, and he laughed and said, look at the havoc I am creating, and wow, you have a large person with you. And you said, yes, I'll see you later, Tommy. And you got back on Bob's back, and you walked back to the alley, and the friends that you had brought with you went back to the past, and you decided to go back with Bob 500 million years to see why the fruits and vegetables are coming from the past, because they're not coming on their own, or are they? And so you went back in the past with Bob, and you walked around until you saw Mary Poppins-Slubenoggenflop. Mary Poppins-Slubenoggenflop was another Homo giganticus, but who was tossing vegetables and fruit into a hole in the air, basically, well, in the sky from your point of view, because it's pretty high up. And she was clearly tossing them into the future through this time vortex that Tommy had created in the future. Tommy with the very smart horse. But Tommy was throwing the fruits and vegetable was on the other side, opening up this hole so that Mary could throw the fruits and vegetables. And you asked her in the Giganticus language why she was throwing fruits and vegetables into this hole, and she said she just enjoyed seeing them go through the hole. And sadly, for Mary and for everybody standing around, that's exactly when Tommy, well, 500 million years later, farted, and that fart went back in time and came out the hole. It knocked Mary completely unconscious. She, in fact, fell on top of a forest and flattened it. And so there was no longer a problem with the fruits and vegetables coming through, but you had to figure out a way of closing the vortex. And so Bob just put up a sign that says "Vortex closed" in Giganticus language, and please do not throw vegetables in here. And you figure that's probably a good idea. And anyway, it's convenient to have a vortex to go back and forth in case you ever need to visit. And so you said goodbye to Bob, and he lifted you up to the hole, and you actually dived through the vortex, and you landed right on top of Larry the horse because you came through into the future 500 million years later. And Larry's friend Tommy said, "Hey, get off my horse." And you said, "You've done enough damage already." But there certainly were a lot of fruits and vegetables laying around the city that had been rolling around. And you said, "Listen, I'll make you a deal. I won't tell anybody that you were responsible for the havoc that has been wreaked upon our city if you'll cooperate with me in creating a giant feast for the city out of these fruits and vegetables." And so Tommy thought that was a good idea, and his horse also, because his horse was not quite sure about the entire scheme to begin with. And you guys went up to the mayor and you explained what you wanted to do, and the mayor had no idea why there were giant fruits and vegetables, but decided to create a huge fruit salad and vegetable salad and various other dishes, and the whole town came out and ate them and lived happily ever after. And while they were doing that, you grabbed Tommy's time machine out of his back pocket. Sadly, that did not solve the problem because Tommy could create a new time machine. So you had to really explain to Tommy that his farts had destroyed at least one ancient forest and could have repercussions throughout time. I mean, if you accidentally destroy your ancestors 500 million years ago through your own incredible farting powers, then you might not evolve yourself. And Tommy realized the importance of this statement and decided to be much more responsible with time machines in the future. Well, that pretty much wraps up that story. The end. Once upon a time, there was a small pickle. It was a happy pickle, as happy as pickles can be. It lived in a jar. As far as it could remember, it had always lived in a jar. And it experienced all of the other pickles being taken out one by one until this pickle, whom I'll call Glidge, was the last pickle in the jar. And Glidge waited around for somebody to take him out of that jar. I mean, he waited and waited. I mean, in the old days, people used to come for pickles all the time. He kept telling himself, I know someone's going to want to put me in a sandwich. I mean, why would they all of a sudden stop eating pickles? It makes no sense. Nothing made sense to Glidge anymore. And one day, the refrigerator door opened up and a whole bunch of stuff got pulled out, the eggs, the milk, all sorts of stuff. They all thought they were going to be eaten. But the fridge door was not closed all the way by accident. And Glidge looked out using his non-existent eyes and saw into the kitchen. He saw that the people were just throwing out a lot of the food. It's like, wait a minute, there were boxes everywhere. They were packing up. They were going on some kind of trip or something and leaving him and some cream cheese. Note, they came and they got the cream cheese too. It was just Glidge. Just Glidge in that fridge. Glidge looked around. Is there anybody else in here? They shut the fridge. It was dark. Well, he's used to being in the dark, but there's no, I'm alone in a fridge. And time went on. I mean, days, weeks. It felt like an eternity. The fridge was never opened, and Glidge got a little sad, a little depressed. Glidge was the saddest pickle of all. Meanwhile, it was winter. The people who had lived in the house had gone off to Virginia for some strange reason. I think because they were going to live inside of a sinkhole. And the house was all locked up. Nobody was in there. The animals who lived around, mostly rabbits and penguins. I'd see a couple of penguins had ran off from the zoo and were living in and amongst the other animals around there, although they were really kind of hot because they preferred cold weather. But the point was that it was becoming winter, and that is cold weather. But the house was sitting there, and it looked very enticing. I mean, I sure would like to live inside that house, said a groundhog looking out of his hole one day at that house. I bet that house is cozy and warm and has all sorts of good things to eat. And so the groundhog walked around the house, and he saw that there was a window slightly open, just slightly, but it was too high for him to reach. He asked a rabbit if the rabbit could jump up there and open up the window. "Why should I?" said the rabbit. Uh, because I'd like you to. Good enough for me. And so the rabbit jumped on the groundhog's head, jumped up to that window, squeezed in under the window, ran downstairs, and kicked and kicked and kicked and kicked on the front door. Nothing happened, but then the rabbit saw that there was a mouse hole in the wall, and he started digging at it, digging. Rabbits have some digging abilities, and he made the mouse hole bigger until he crawled into the wall. There was a family of mice there. They screamed, "Eek!" "Don't worry," said the rabbit. "I'm just passing through." He kept going, and he pushed a brick until he managed to get a hole to the outside that the groundhog could squeeze through. Well, pretty soon, more and more animals started squeezing into through that hole and got in the house because it was a nice place to hang out for the summer. I'm telling you, even though it was the winter, which was also nice to hang out. And they were playing, and one day the groundhog decided to open up the fridge, and he saw the pickle in the jar, and he pulled it out. Well, he had no real opposable thumbs and wasn't able to open up the pickle jar, but he put the pickle on top of a table, and all the animals looked at the pickle jar, and they were like, "Woohoo!" They played dance around the pickle jar. Well, when a bear moved in, the bear was able to open up the pickle jar, pulled out that pickle, and ate it. But as soon as he got it in his mouth, he realized that it was full of vinegar. He thought it was a cucumber. He spat it back out, which the rabbit thought was hilarious. He caught the pickle on his nose, and he flopped it around, and soon the animals were playing toss the pickle. And they were tossing the pickle around. The pickle was going in circles when suddenly a car pulled up. "Animals, quick, get out of here!" And they all started scurrying around and leaving. And all the animals left because the humans had come home from vacation. There was a single pickle when they got there on their table, and the rest of the house was kind of torn up. They realized that somebody had got inside their house and really messed things up.